Hello and welcome to another edition of Fridays with Father. Considering we're getting close to October, which is Halloween time, somebody asked me to talk about cremation. So I thought, maybe not a bad idea to start it out in October, even though this is the end of September. So anyway, for a long, long time, the church prohibited cremation. And that was because of a number of different things. First of all, some people say, and it's true, that Jesus was not cremated and therefore we shouldn't cremate people. And then the early saints of the church also were not cremated. Now the Greeks and the Romans cremated their people. And so they thought that this was a way to kind of differentiate themselves, because Christians do believe, obviously, in an afterlife. And so the idea was that by cremating someone, then you're really not showing your profession of faith in the afterlife. And the idea is you have that body, some form of that body with you, and so you shouldn't cremate. And so for many, many, many years, the idea was that the church would not accept cremation of dead bodies. However, we have come to a point in our history where people are questioning that, and very rightly so. The times are changing, and so people are asking that question. And certainly God can raise up a body from cremated ashes, and so why are we saying that God is somehow limited in that capacity? So people have started cremating their deceased loved ones more and more over the past few years, mostly because of money. Not to say that that's the only reason, but funerals with a body are very expensive. And so people are just realizing that this also might be the best environmental decision as well. So there are a lot of reasons for it. So the church back in 1963, I believe it was, changed the position and said that you could cremate your deceased loved ones as long as it's not done out of a contempt for the church's teaching on everlasting life. And so most of the funerals that we do now are with cremated remains. And that does help because, some families want to move the person's remains to another place. The only thing that we would caution is I've seen folks who have kept the cremated remains in their house indefinitely. And so grandma or grandpa is just sitting on the fireplace shelf, or even worse, put in a closet someplace. The reason we have Catholic cemeteries is we believe in the honor and the respect that is due to human remains, whether those are cremated remains or an intact body. And one of the reasons we have cemeteries is because we believe that there is a value in going to visit the places where our deceased loved ones are buried. And so keeping grandma, grandpa, whoever it might be, in the closet or on a shelf is probably not the best way to keep those ashes. And so, do your best to, in a timely manner, bury those ashes in the ground. Now, some people have told me, and I can understand where they're coming from, they want to hold those ashes until the spouse of the deceased person passes away. I never thought of that, and that does make a lot of sense. You got to follow your conscience in this. But the best way to really honor a body, whether it's intact or cremated, is to bury it so that it goes back from whence it came, from dust to dust, ashes to ashes. So I would challenge you on the one hand to really treat with respect the cremated remains. And some have told me that they're taking the cremated remains and making them into other things. For example, taking cremated remains, treating them in such a way with pressure and heat to make them into diamonds, and then you make a ring out of them or a pendant. And once again, that's really not the best way to honor the deceased person's body. The church teaches also that there are particular steps that should be taken when a person dies. So when we have the funeral, the ideal way to have the funeral is to have the body present, because you bless the body, etc. And so the ideal would be have a body present in church, then afterwards that body can then be cremated and then interred in a cemetery. Okay? So it's kind of difficult because nowadays the funerals are so expensive, sometimes more than $10,000. It certainly is a lot cheaper to cremate the body first, and more convenient, because then you can make provision for a memorial mass sometime in the future and not right away. But it's important to make sure that we honor a person's life, in the funeral, but also honor their body with respect that is due to that body. So it's not an easy thing to talk about, because it seems like it's a holdover from the past, and in some ways it is. But as Christian people, we do honor the body of the person. And when we come to church at a funeral, we bless the body of the person. Now, one person once told me, and forgive me for this, I'm quoting somebody else, we should just treat them the same. Big box, little box. That is a large casket or a small urn still contains the cremains of the person, and that's true. But at the same time, we will always honor the body, because certainly that is the way Jesus was buried, that's the way the early saints were buried, and so we want to keep that tradition going. So if you have any other questions, talk to your pastor, talk to me, and we can walk you through this, because there are a lot of different scenarios when we talk about this. But the most important principles that we underline in this particular thing is a respect for the body of the person. Also, too, a desire to have the funeral mass have the intact body, the body present. However, we will do a funeral for the cremated remains as well. And then also the last principle is to bury those ashes and not to keep them. Once again, on that, big box, little box idea, you're not going to keep the casket of your loved one in your house. It would just be strange. Well, it would be the same thing for the cremated remains. As soon as possible, as soon as you're able to do so, put those cremated remains in a sanctified burial plot. So once again, thank you. Sorry if it was a little much of a downer today in terms of talking about cremation. But there are a lot of other questions that come up, and they're running through my head, but I don't want to take too much time on this. And if you have other questions and concerns, please let me know. But the most important thing is to treat the body, whether it's an intact body or the cremated remains, to treat them with the honor and respect that they deserve. Have a great day.